And you are back on the Tortoise and Hare experience. And I love the way we started out. Kickstart My Heart, one of my favorite songs ever in the history of that type of like LA music.
Is it? Why?
You know what it is? It's the guitar. The guitar in it and is one of the most heaviest, most funnest, loving guitar riffs ever. Then at the very end, you know, for me, it's very questionable because some people always say at the end, you know, when they make the guitar say "Kickstart My Heart," some people are saying, no, that's vocal, and I'm always like, I think that's guitar. So that's always been like one of those like, I need to get a hold of.
It's a talk box.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a talk box. It's the same thing that Peter Frampton used to say, "Do you feel like I do?" Mm-hmm. You create an envelope filter out of your mouth by running the sound of the guitar into your mouth through a straw, and you form the words with your mouth, and then it comes back out the microphone you're using. That's right. So that's why when you see the same thing with "Living on a Prayer." Is probably the most classic use of the talk box besides Peter Frampton, and it basically looked like you're drinking a giant fountain drink while you're playing guitar and singing at the same time. I used one on the 01 song. Hi, this is Hal Sparks, by the way, joining the show. Jumping right in. Yeah, I don't really care. I used it on My Pretty Parasite on the first 01 record because it's about a girl who won't stop talking. So
much like me.
Well. I think you're fairly patient with your co-host. I mean, if you were never stop talking, you wouldn't actually have a co-host at all.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I actually need one, but
you do.
No, you don't. But no one really does. It's just a differential act.
No, but
I don't even need one. You guys can take a break. I'll just talk.
Deal.
That's how it works.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is very, very true.
Well,
I think that "Kickstart Your Heart" is a very sad song to me.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, because
it's about being an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah. You know, when Nikki Sixx wrote that song, he had died.
Right, sure.
And, you know, he was a good friend of mine at that time. He was married to Brandy Brandt, who was another playmate. And as a matter of fact, her niece was on your show at Flappers last night. Erin Darling is Brandy Brandt's niece.
That's
and so all of that like comes back to me when I think of that song and what he went through dying. And because I've had that same experience, not because of drugs, but my heart had stopped. And, you know, so that reference to me is like, God, that's, I have to take.
Yeah, that doesn't strike me the same way like a ballad about it would do it. I think it's kind of like the fable about Living on a Prayer, and I can't totally verify that this is the story of it, but the idea that Living on a Prayer, they were working on the album Slippery When Wet and they did it in Vancouver, and allegedly John Bon Jovi got a false positive AIDS test, and he wrote the chorus to Living on a Prayer, waiting for the second AIDS test to come back see if it was positive. So, we're halfway there. Living on a Prayer, take my hand, we'll make it, I swear, is the idea that he was singing this to his wife.
Yeah.
And then when it came back negative and he was fine, they just wrote essentially a Bruce Springsteen song.
Right.
They just changed it. And so "Kickstart My Heart's the same kind of deal. Like, yeah, that's a scary moment in his life, but ultimately it became an arena rock song.
Yeah. All of their songs are arena rock songs.
Sure.
You know,
that's the kind of band they are. And and they should stay. I'm not a big fan of when people, you know, like take a crap on bands like Nickelback or what have you, just the idea going that they should do something else. Like what precisely, you know, like what Buster Poindexter song should they be doing? What Walt Whitman poem should they set to music to make you feel okay about it? Like everybody's allowed to play their own music and you're allowed to turn your ears off or walk away.
Right, exactly. I know my daughter has a problem with Coldplay.
Sure.
You know, her
how does she shop?
Turn out exactly.
I mean, how do you even get in an elevator? It's like having a phobia of enclosed spaces. I think, I think Coldplay is the musical equivalent of being buried alive. But that being said, for some people, that's very relaxing.
It is. You know, I wouldn't play it for my patients, but you know, I would play it possibly for somebody in a coma.
Sure, right. To see if, and over and over again, there's a form of torture to get them to wake up. Yeah, they would literally wake up from the coma just to shut it off.
You must shut that off.
Woke up
It's
just long
killing
enough
me.
to snooze button the thing and go
You're
back
gonna have
into
to
a coma.
kickstart my heart after
That's
that.
right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, we usually start off the show with an experience.
Right, but Hal Sparks,
I
comes
am
in
right.
and
It
he
is
just,
an experience.
Yep.
But it was funny because I had no idea you were going to be on the show at all until literally I got here, and then Max
Yeah, me
was
neither.
like,
Well, you
Right.
never know with Hal.
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
You never
true.
know.
No.
And it was funny because the other day I have the HBO app. I'm watching and they're like, hey, we want you to watch the Tobey Maguire.
What's his name?
Spider-Man movies.
Toby
But-
Maguire. Toby.
Toby Maguire.
Tobey Maguire.
I don't
Yeah.
know what you were saying,
Spider-Man
but
2,
it was
these,
nothing like
right.
Toby.
And so I was watching it, and it's been a long time since I've seen them, but I remember loving them, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it. And then I remember the elevator scene with you.
That's right.
And I go, isn't that Hal Sparks?
Yes, it is.
I was like, what the hell is he doing in this movie? I
Right.
completely
He
forgot.
shows up
Right.
in the
And
strangest places.
that was just literally just the other day
Yeah.
I was watching it, and here you are in front of me.
I surround you at all sides. That's why if you don't have any family in the industry, your only answer is ubiquity. You must be everywhere at all times. I'm using the Tony Robbins methodology that if he didn't have that half-hour infomercial on every single night for 6 hours a night for 20 years, nobody would know who the fuck he
Right,
was.
right. Tony Robbins with the castle house that Hal Sparks is soon to have.
Well, it's a different one. I'm not buying the same one. I'm going
No,
to
but-
3D print one.
Yeah, which is amazing.
You're buying a castle?
No, I'm 3D printing one.
What?
Yeah, that's the goal. I'm meeting with a company that has a 3D printer that prints in concrete,
That's cool.
and meeting with them in 2 weeks. Going up to San Francisco to have a meeting with them about what it would take to print one here in kind of up Antelope Valley that way on a giant stretch of land.
That has always been a dream of mine, is to own a castle.
Sure.
That I would want it to have a moat, obviously.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the moat.
You're
There's
not
too
a
much
moat.
maintenance, and stagnant water stinks, and some mosquitoes.
Yeah.
It's just a mistake.
But we talked about that.
Yeah, I was like, no, but what you have is basically kill traps like that, a bear fall where they just cover, it's a big pit covered with
Right.
spikes in it, covered in foliage, and then you project onto it images with using digital projectors, a moat with sharks in it.
Okay.
And people run up and they go, "This is crap, man. It's not even a real moat." And then they step on it and they fall in and they're impaled.
See, that's
Yeah.
what I love.
I'm just
Smart.
saying
I
that,
love
but zombies won't care either way. They wouldn't be
Right.
stopped by water, so you might as well have the spike pit.
Are you
Yeah.
going to have a
Are you
commercial-
afraid? Are you afraid of zombies?
No. No. You can. Anybody can outlast it takes 3 days to outlast a zombie apocalypse because the flies. Flies would actually disintegrate all dead flesh. So after 3 days, flies would gather on the zombies. They would lay eggs in their flesh. The maggots themselves would consume all the flesh that can be consumed off the bones. So the teeth would fall out. They wouldn't have eyes. They wouldn't know where they were walking. They'd have no sense of smell, so they certainly couldn't hear or see or smell you because their ears would decay as well. And eventually, all connective tissue would be rotted away in about 3 to 7 days. So if you can just hold out for about a week, doesn't make for a good Walking Dead.
Right, I was gonna say,
You can't get 7 seasons out of that. But that's the reality of zombies. Is that what you don't want is a biochemical psycho attack where
Right.
the DOD creates some sort of madness drug that makes everybody nuts, and that's conceivably possible. But even that they'll chew themselves to pieces if left to their own devices in about 2 weeks. So pretty much you just need to, just like a regular earthquake, you need to have about 3 weeks of supplies and enough drinking water, and as soon as they say zombie apocalypse, fill your tub.
And guns.
There you go.
Tons of guns.
Nah.
No?
No, guns. Have we learned nothing? All guns do.
No, we
all
haven't.
guns do. No, guns are good against the living, but they make so much noise they draw the dead or the crazies, depending on what group you're afraid of. The crack sound of it means, it's like a mating call to psychopaths. It says, "Oh, I have stuff worth having."
Yeah, here I am.
Yeah, right. Whereas, train your family in the use of knives.
Okay.
Know the outline of your entire house, and if there's an intruder somebody goes low and somebody goes high. Do I have to teach a class?
Yeah, that would be great.
Christ, what kind of an asshole has a gun in the city?
Exactly.
A
See,
lot of
this is
people.
why my house is filled with knives.
That's right.
Is it really?
Have you've not walked past this barrier?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a
I'm a
walrus-
close blades
I have
expert.
a walrus penis that I use for home defense.
This is a fact.
Yeah.
This
Is
a
it? Oh, this
fact.
is real.
Yep. Yeah, the Inuits in northern Canada and up the Alaskan way, they use walrus penises, which is a big bone essentially, because no walrus has ever had a genuinely aroused erection looking at another walrus. It's just not possible. It's a mating act, but it's not out of visual stimulation. So nature has jumped in, and provided assistance in the form of a physical bone, and it's curved at the base, much like how you would best hold a bat, essentially. And the Inuits used it to club seals and fight amongst themselves. And I have one that was a gift to me. It was a re-gift, technically, because the person who got it didn't want to bring it back in their unchecked bag, and I insisted on bringing it back in my unchecked bag because I wanted an X-ray technician to go, "Is that a walrus dick?" And I'd have, yeah, that is. And anyway, so I have that for home security because I figure if I lose and I'm killed by the intruder, hey, I was defending myself with a walrus dick, so I'm instantly a comedy legend. And if I win, I killed someone with a walrus dick, so I'm now Thor.
Headline.
Yeah.
Right. So
CNN
it's a
Connect.
win-win no matter what
Yeah,
happens.
it's perfect.
You're a new superhero.
That's right. I get to go down funny or come up swinging. Right.
Yeah.
Literally.
What would be your mode of defense? What
My-
would you do?
M16. Just,
See, you're
That's
an
a
idiot.
great idea. So you have family sleeping in another room, and you're just going to kind
wake
of
'em.
open, just crack across the
Yeah.
entire room.
Of course.
No.
Yeah.
That's just
The Marine in me.
stupid.
I mean, come on.
An M16. Yeah. That's why, and which is totally fine if you live in the sticks, which is the big difference between most, like, the idea of why rednecks like guns and city people think they're stupid is because in the sticks you don't have any neighbors you're going to shoot, and the only real danger you have is your kid finding it and shooting himself. And you also know that the woods and the other houses around you are filled with other maniacs like yourself, so you might need it against them. Like, I know Charlie from church, we see him every Sunday, but goddamn, he gets a couple tequilas in him. He might go after all of us. That man's got an I eat people look in his eye. So I'm just going to say, I think we should mount the 50 cal upstairs. Let Charlie run it. There's a problem. We all have a signal. You know what I mean? We don't use the dinner bell because we're always eating anyway. So why don't we use that as the roundup? Everybody get to your station. We'll do a drill.
Yeah, 50 cal would complete. Oh my! Have you ever shot a 50 cal?
Of course not.
Oh my god, that would just tear you to pieces. Just
Well,
one shot.
That's
what-
that's all it's for. It's an
Yeah.
anti-personnel gun.
Yeah.
It's actually supposed to be an anti-vehicle gun.
Right.
And in the Geneva Convention, you're not supposed to shoot anybody
With,
with
it.
it.
Individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, charging humans. Right. Yeah, which I'm sure in the middle of IEDs and bombs and shit going off, the people going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Easy. Sorry, guys. I almost shot at those 97 dudes charging towards us with small incendiary devices they'd been making all afternoon. My bad. I'll go back to shooting the truck. Never happened. So,
Never.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Other than that, I have no opinion. But yeah, so if you have a zombie apocalypse coming, just be aware, that all you got to do is wait it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fun things
Have
to-
you heard that now they're debating whether or not the whole idea of weaponry in the primal state was ever a fact. So
Whether humans had weapons up to a
Yes.
certain point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
Well, I mean, you can make that argument in that, like Chinese people invented gunpowder, and they used it to make giant, beautiful explosions in the sky. And it took a Northern European going, that could kill someone. That's awesome. But they weren't the first to run off with it. And I think that comes from the myth of the clubbed woman,
right.
which is an early, early baseline first wave feminism view of looking at how males and females related for a long time.
Yeah.
It was this idea that men used to club women on the head and drag them into the cave and rape them because no one would
They
go willingly.
They just do that now.
Yeah, right. Well, everybody has a safe word, and 50 Shades of Ape. I suppose. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the. Yeah. How do you have a safe word if you have a ball gag in? I've always wondered that. Is there like a certain number of snaps?
Yeah, you're tied. You got a gag in.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's got to be a plunger or something.
SOS blink.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What's your safe word, Turtle?
I'm still trying to find someone to
have a safe word with. That's
sure.
nice.
Right. Yeah. Right.
That's nice.
Yeah. That's like asking someone who's never been to the ocean what their favorite fish is, to catch, right? So, but in reality, I think we have a very limited view of what history was in general, and we infantilize a lot of rudimentary cultures, and we emphasize the evil of industrial cultures because they're here and we can look at them,
right?
It is if you look at it from an intellectual or a philosophical point of view, it is the historical equivalent of saying kids today and their stupid phones. It's just like people used to, the Industrial Revolution when it started, everybody's trying to rush to get stuff done. The reality is that the Industrial Revolution has been great for human life and most of the other animals on the planet that we actually give a shit about. There was a long-held idea that buffalo were wiped out by humans coming in, which was not the case at all. It was basically a predator imbalance, ultimately.
Yeah. I thought that was a parasite issue.
Well, yeah, in a mix. Yeah, basically they didn't have any natural predators, so disease ultimately took them, and there was so much volume that they could, they have these huge skull piles they used to look at for these what were supposedly the big slaughters. Well, there's just those were almost like found, and they wanted the ground that all this stuff was scattered over. So they would go and just gather all the skulls and bones and stuff, anything they couldn't make. So they make these big towers of heads, and they go, oh my God, look at the evil white man or the evil Native American kind of moving, the Iroquois moving west or what have you, killing off all these animals, when in reality they were basically going, this is a nice field, but for all the skulls. So let's gather them up because they're a little hard to step on because they got horns. And we'll gather them up into a big pile and either burn them or use them or, paint them and sell them to the French. The French bought everything. That's where all the scalps went.
Anything.
That's where all the scalps went. Scalping was a French activity that some natives picked up as a way of making the British and what became later the Americans think the French had done stuff. The French used to scalp people all the time because they'd sell the hair pelts because wigs were very popular back then because people didn't have shampoo. Because the past was disgusting, but yeah, the idea that somehow we were instantly warring for resources when the world was spread, everybody was spread out so widely. There was basically you never had to look back in most areas of the world. So you start walking, there was no reason to go, we need that piece of land. It matters to us because everything in front of you was green pasture and food and fruit and animals and livestock.
That's where everything was at. You wanted to get to that other side.
Yeah, that was the spread to Northern
Europe. Why go
Europe.
Backwards?
That's right. The spread to Siberia. That was the spread to Mongolia. Was
and there was possibly refrigeration on the other side of that.
There was ice, right? Yeah. There was ice, right? So I don't buy the fact that the innocence of tribal nations or the innocence of animals. I think we often use that as a sweet way of painting them as stupid. Mm-hmm. We'll go, well, Native Americans, they had such camaraderie with the land. Like, no, they were nomadic. They knew that if they filled the shithole, they'd move camp. They just had enough room that by the time they came back next year, the shithole was covered in dirt and an animal had nested in it, and they could hunt that too. And it just was there was enough sparse land you could make up for it. Now there just isn't.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, and there's almost no intrinsic philosophical difference between Native American tribes and Celtic tribes, Northern European, Swedish, kind of what are the tribal behaviors of those groups. If you look at when they opened the big tunnel through the mountain in Sweden, and everybody calls it a big, devil worshipping thing. If you watch that video, it's fucking amazing. It's like, it's like a 2-hour dance show. It's all pagan and all this kind of stuff. This like goat-headed woman, topless, being flown in onto a
I think I was in that video.
No. It's amazing, but it is representative of the Northern European paganistic, ritualistic societies, which were much more agrarian, much more adaptable to the environment. And the industrialization hits everybody eventually because you get The better you get at saving people from dying, the more resources you need. The more resources you need, the better you got to, the more efficient you have to get. The more efficient you have to get, somebody eventually goes, why the fuck are we digging these seeds all day long if we could have a little machine that'll do it? Every society has a moment where they come to that, and some just get there faster, and sometimes bulldoze the societies that haven't gotten there because they didn't need to. Welcome to Africa, essentially. The resources there are so abundant in a lot of places that they didn't realize they were going to run out one day.
Mm-hmm. India as well.
Yeah, that's right.
It's frightening.
Yeah, well, they've got a public defecation problem. Once they handle that, then we'll talk about what are the other issues in India.
First things first.
They literally there's like 9 TED Talks by like Indian philosophers and citizens and people wearing masks so they don't get in trouble in their home country going, we have a public shitting problem.
Yeah.
We need to stop shitting in public. But again, all societies have some version of that. Like, Boston on the right Saturday night, everybody's pissing on a doorway. So, civilization is is always encroaching on our need to, relieve ourselves in an emergency. So societies will always be fighting against that. They'll always be ice skating uphill against our own behavior, our need to eat, have sex, and relieve ourselves.
Things have to be done.
That's right.
And our need for music, which, you brought some music for us to play. Thank you so much for that.
I'm that's because I'm singing tonight for the American Heart Association at Ultimate Jam Night at the Whiskey, and it's all heart related songs. So I'm doing "Kickstart Your Heart" and "Hide Your Heart" by Kiss.
Okay.
So I made all my themed songs heart related.
Heart related.
Listening pleasure.
Yeah. You could have just played some other songs by the band Heart too.
Yeah, but too cryptic. People would get it right away. Although we could do Heartless.
Yeah.
Heartless. That's one of my favorite Heart songs.
That's right.
So do you want to do Hide Your Heart?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, let's do that. And then
it's very dramatic.
Okay.
Very dramatic. There's a great story about Hide Your Heart because Paul Stanley sings that song, and Ace Frehley obviously has this contentious relationship with the rest of the band for a good long while before right before they got back together for the reunion tour. Was probably the height of its contention, and Ace put out a solo record where he did Hide Your Heart as well, and it's a very different version because he obviously doesn't sing as high as Paul does, but fine. But whoever wrote the liner notes didn't check what they were writing, and so there's a line in it where he goes, the song is "Rosa had a lover on the shady side of town, Tito, he was king of the streets." On Ace's record, and he sings it the same way, but the liner notes say, "I had a lover on the shady side of town, Tito, he was king of the streets." So according to Ace's liner notes, he had a boyfriend named Tito in New York. So there you go. I doubt it. Knowing Ace, I sincerely doubt it.
I don't know.
Yeah. But always, I remember opening that cassette, and if you remember what cassettes used to smell like in the early 90s. There's a printing shift to how they used to seal them, and CDs and brand new CDs and brand new cassettes especially had that plastic like new car smell that they puffed into it before they would seal it up to make it smell nice, and they did it on purpose, I think. But I remember very distinctly the smell of that is in my nostrils as I'm reading this, and I went, I what?
What?
I had a lover on the shit. Well, all right, you go, Ace. And I didn't listen to it yet, so I'm like, this is a hell of a rewrite. What an interesting way to come out of the closet. Okay, here you go, Ace. Let's hear it. And he sang it the same way, and I was like, oh, a typo of the worst kind. Who hates you at your label?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, he has that funny accent, so
Carly, how you doing? Yeah, I'm the trout player. Yeah, right.
Oh, Ace.
Yeah, but by the way, he sounds awesome now. And if you get a chance to see him live, anybody sees him live now, it's a great show.
Yeah,
it was so good that I believe that's why Paul went and did his solo, one last kiss, in a solo tour, essentially, because he was like, oh shit, if Ace can sound that good by himself, I can certainly broom out something worth watching. And it was like the Paul one is terrific as well. It's amazing.
Yeah. I believe Anthony Esposito, who is currently with Red Dragon Cartel, produced most of that.
Jakey Lee's band.
Yes.
Yeah, who's amazing as well.
Yes, yeah. Jakey, and the new stuff is phenomenal.
Yeah.
just heard it. And
Oh, right.
blown away.
That even newer than I've heard.
Yeah.
All
They're
right,
still
very
in the
excited.
studio
Yeah.
in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania.
That's great.
Yep.
An unfortunately named town, unless you make pickles, I suppose.
Well, that's the whole point of it. They do the pickle drop
Yeah.
on New Year's Eve, and it's
just to make,
it's,
to come up with a reason for the town to be named Dillsburg. It has no relation.
It's
like
just
the
frightening.
peach trees in Georgia. They didn't have any peach trees in Georgia.
Yes.
They're pitch trees.
They're pitch
But the
trees.
people with their accents messed it up, and they were like, "Where are all the peach trees?"
right.
They're pitch trees.
They're pitch.
Oh, well, what the hell's a pitch tree? It's like a birch, kind
But
of.
it's-
Well, damn, we should grow peaches, can't we? Sure. I don't know. Now it's the peach capital of the
That's,
world.
it's the
right?
state of
Georgia peach, right?
That's right.
All because of a shitty accent. Right.
It's what happens.
Life happens that way, Carly. So,
Right.
yeah.
I had a girl named Tito.
You know,
I don't know.
it's funny too because Jesse Owens. I was reading an article on Jesse Owens, and because of his actual name is J.C. Owens, but because of the accent,
That's right.
it came out Jesse Owens.
Yeah.
I just read
Jesse
that.
Owens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like in Germany right now. If you go there and hang out, the cool thing to say coming and going when you're saying somebody is tschüss. Everybody goes tschüss. Yeah, tschüss.
Cheers?
Tschüss.
Is that cheers?
Yeah, it's cheers with a German accent. And they've been hanging out in England. All the Germans have gone up to England to hang out and back and forth because of the European Union. Everybody's saying cheers, but they're going, hey, cheers, 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 cheers. It's for fuck's sake. Yeah. So
Just say the word.
that's right. Just say chiss. Chiss.
It's upsetting though, because my first name is Michel. Mm-hmm. It's
Michel.
not a difficult name to say. Mm-hmm. Nobody can say it. Mm-hmm. It's oh, you're Michelle. You're
Right.
No, I'm Michel.
Well, you had two
That's
people
it.
on from Kentucky, myself included, on your show, and we have Versailles, Kentucky. So
That's
we also have
in a nutshell, right?
yeah,
there.
we have Paris and London as well. And by the way, Bali in Indonesia is named after Paris.
Really?
Yeah.
It's Bali. Paris. If you say an L instead of an R because of how your language works, you're going to say instead of Paris, you're going to say Paris, which is Bali after a while.
Wow.
Doesn't take long,
Yeah, everything just gets muddled.
Yeah, the craziest thing, and I think I heard you earlier saying, like if you live in LA, you're Mexican or whatever. Like nobody's Mexican in LA. Everybody's Spanish, and Spanish is a European language that bulldozed the Mexicans. Nobody speaks Nahuatl. You know what I mean?
Actually, I was just brushing up on my new auto.
Yeah,
the other
right.
day.
Nobody.
I was in the bathroom. I was nawaddling.
It's the weirdest thing about and I don't have a problem with bilingual education school. I think it's better if people learn multiple languages. I think as Americans, we should be the 4-language country. But it's always funny to me when they're like, we need bilingual Spanish education in LA. And I'm like, why? That's a European language that killed the locals. That's like having a Navajo Indian talk with a Cockney accent and go, oh, I'm just living up to my, my roots. Yeah, I'm keeping in touch with my heritage. You know what I mean? Because it literally is a white European language that bulldozed most of South America.
Yeah.
And so the idea that you're like, we need to teach that in the States and if you don't, you're against Mexicans. You're like, actually.
But
that's
we got the wall coming up, so it's
sure, it won't matter, right? Yeah. But it is literally the equivalent of if we were trying to enforce speaking French in the northeastern corridor of the United States because of Quebec. You know what I mean? Because Quebec, they speak French.
Right.
They got that crap Quebecois kind of accent, right?
Right.
That isn't really French, but it's a French accent that bulldozed that
now,
part of.
Is it Quebec or is it
Quebec?
Croix?
It's Quebec. Quebec.
Quebec.
Quebec.
That's
Quebec.
That
Which sounds more
Russian.
Spanish.
Yeah,
That sounds
or
Russian to me.
Quebec would be the Russian version of it. But it's not that different. I'm just saying that, saying people in Southern California should speak Spanish because of Mexico is the exact same as saying people in
Right.
upstate New York should speak French because of Quebec.
Yeah.
It's not because of the locals.
Right.
It's not. They're not speaking Inuit or the Canadian Indian languages. Any of the 5 tribes that moved up into Canada to escape being slaughtered by the British when they came here. That's not the language that's being. They're like, we need to preserve because if you look at one of the great gods of Mexico, Quetzalcoatl, right? I mean, this is the god that will come back. This is the Mayan root of a lot of the indigenous.
That's the bitch you got to watch out for.
That's right. Does the word Quetzalcoatl sound Spanish to you?
Yes, it does actually.
Well, you're Mexican.
Yeah,
That's
of
why.
course.
Yeah. Not it's Nahuatl. It's the language. It's the and even that I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, but the point is it's the indigenous language of the Mexican territories, not Spanish. Spanish would never come up with a Quetzalcoatl word. It's
Right.
not that. It's a Latin-based language. And the idea again, Latin America. Guess what? English is a Latin language too. All of North America is a Latin America. If you really look, if you're going to say that, it's amazingly how slipshod our history attachment is, or whatever. And I think it would behoove us better as people to let native territories in the United States have more of an attachment to their ability to hunt, their ability to grow things. If there's uranium there, the United States owes them a huge debt for going in and mining it against their will, and that money in and of itself, and obviously the casinos are helping to some degree, at least in rebuilding a lot of the communities. It's a start, anyways. But the same thing with Mexican people who are coming up into the United States or whatever. It would be kind of an amazing thing if we did a resurgence of the indigenous languages of the area as part of our natural curriculum here. But the idea of teaching Spanish is like saying, why don't we just teach German? Because of all the German Americans that came over here, and when Hollywood was started, every time Kodak would come to try and enforce their laws, their patent on film, would all run to Tijuana and start filming stuff over the border. That's why Hollywood is where it is because they all went as far west as they could and still be in America and not be overtaken by anybody who was coming over the border. But if they needed to run away and finish filming, they could do it in Mexico. Yeah. And so other than that, I have no opinion.
Now it's Canada, right? That's where everyone's filming everything now.
Sure, yeah. Well,
and Atlanta.
Yeah, well, that's because the tax breaks in the United States are now equal to the money difference in Canada, which isn't all that different. But when we started shooting Queer as Folk, it was 56 cents on the dollar. So your dollar went almost twice as far to shoot in Toronto as it did to shoot in Boston or Pittsburgh, in our case on the show, or anywhere else for that matter, just in costs, not in, okay, we have to get permits, like literally just human beings, housing them, feeding them, studio space, camera operators, just crew. Right. Their money went further. The odd thing was, and this happens a lot, is that marketers do this thing where they look at what you'll pay $20 for, and then they price stuff accordingly, essentially. It's not because of what it's worth. It's what you'll pay for it is how they determine it. Well, in Canada, Canadians will pay $20 for the same thing an American will pay $20 for. If they see a pair of jeans for $20, they'll go, "Oh, that's a good deal. I'll buy jeans for $20." But Canadian dollars are worth $10. But they don't care. They're selling the same product in two separate countries for the exact same numerical price, even though the value of those currencies is completely off. So it was that was my first big wake up to the flim flam that is marketing and sales, and how much you fall for this kind of idea of what something's worth to you and what you're willing. And that's why they call 20s in the United States yuppie food coupons, because that's essentially what we turn in for a meal. We'll go, okay, $20 for a meal, that's reasonable for both of us. Okay, $20. There you go. I'm okay with parting with that. So are Canadians, but ultimately they're paying $10 US for the same stuff.
Right.
Wait a minute.
That's not fair.
Why am I not paying $10 US? Why isn't it fair that I pay $10? And the Brits had the same experience. You're getting or you go to Japan and it's 60,000 yen for something, because it's like saying how many pennies will you pay for something, ultimately, the way they look at it, because they look at them as small ingots. Like, okay, well, shit, okay, how many of these? Well, look at this computer. Obviously, it's worth a bunch of these buttons, right? So that's it. That part's fascinating to me. Is like I believe in like kind of the United States went south a little bit when we started hating the idea of being globally connected, when the paranoia set in, when the Alex Joneses of the world started hating Freemasonry and the global government, the fear of globalism means automatically, if you're in another country, I have to stiff arm you because I'm afraid of what that means, instead of, well, there's a form of cultural globalism, and then there's you want democracy everywhere, at least.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You want that. You want people everywhere to have the same rights, especially if you come from another country. You want the Irish to be able to have their own religion You want that, all that stuff. Anyways, that's I can get off onto a
Yeah, it's
no end.
My father was a 33-degree Mason.
Oh, all right.
And he would disappear for long periods of time, but he always came back with more information. And because he was from Sweden, and being a Wasa and being in that royal lineage and all of that, it was very important for him to set the standard of what the process with Americans are. And
well, it has to mean something. Again, that's the argument for civilization. The basic idea:
Right.
when you eat, relieve yourself, and have intercourse, do it like a civilized person to some degree,
Right.
because the rest of us have to get on with doing stuff. And if you don't, if you go, it doesn't matter, you automatically set your entire society back 9 steps. Because everybody has to step over it on their way to work, or clean their shoe when they have to walk into the place, or pass something they don't want to see,
Right.
or deal with too much obvious rampant temptation sexually everywhere they go. So they're not focusing on the task at hand, and it's why most great inventions happen where it's freezing cold, because people are in a house by themselves, making
so
smaller and smaller gears and smaller watches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is what my father did
Right.
in Sweden. He, was a doctor of horology, which is a watchmaker, and he invented Movado. So, that was
Right.
the
the refinement of self, and that's ultimately what masonry is about. Yeah.
And exactly, and now there's this big push to free the world of Freemasons,
Right.
and which is very frustrating for me. In my lineage, on my son's 18th birthday, I presented him in court his lineage papers, which is a big deal, because you can't ever get to that level. And you wouldn't know this because you're Mexican.
Of course.
There's Mexican Freemasons.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just, busting the turtle chops.
Yeah, I'm a Mason. I joined last year. My grandfather was a Mason. I'm only at my 2nd degree. I'll be a master Mason by my birthday this year, which is
Is there
great.
a secret handshake?
There's lots of them.
He can't tell you.
I know, because
There's lots of them.
I would ask my father that all the time,
Sure.
and he would tell me nothing.
Well, here's the thing. Is it a secret society? No, because obviously people know about it. It's a society with secrets, and there's value to that. And anybody who says, I don't believe in secret societies, like, okay, do you walk up at a bar and the first person you meet, tell them what your PIN number is?
No,
Of course not.
it's
Unless she's a hooker.
Right. Especially if she's a hooker, one would think. You wouldn't. The point is, you manage the reality. You don't tell your family's secrets to anybody who will listen. You don't.
Well, I'm on the radio.
That's right. But even that is limited to storytelling version of it. You don't gut yourself fully. You express something that you might think there's a commonality to, or that's extraordinary, and therefore the listener won't have an attachment to. But very seldom do people completely gut themselves in front of strangers unless they're mentally ill. And so the idea of, in Masonry is the idea of that you have to grow within it. You earn the knowledge that you get. And we do this all the time with being a doctor, with being an engineer, or, being a psychiatrist. You don't get to practice psychiatry or psychology without some sort of accreditation, and we learn to do that over time. People all over the place were being philosophically, you're like, oh, I'll talk to this guy and fix him, and then the guy jumps off a bridge, and everybody's like, wait a second, okay, maybe
I told you I'd fix him.
right? Maybe he
Armchair
fixes
psychology.
That's
is what
right.
that
Yeah,
is.
but ultimately, like the same thing with doctors or whatever, like just quack medicine, or the idea that at some point you have to start refining at least what you do know about it. There's
Right.
still the unknown always, but at least with Freemasonry, it started with geometry and with literal masonry.
Right.
So the idea was that eventually you have a responsibility for being a refined human being. You have to start working on yourself at some point. Like, read a book outside your normal vocation. Figure out philosophically your worth in the world and start contributing. And so you have a responsibility within Masonry to almost get a university level education just within the organization in a myriad of topics. Some scientific, some esoteric, some philosophical, some spiritual or religious, depending on the depth of your feelings about those things. And I think there's a tremendous value in it. And I think, quite frankly, a lot of the crap we find ourselves in with the current administration and the people who supported them on one end are the Alex Jones arc of, it doesn't really matter. the depth of this country, what it was built on, doesn't really matter. What matters now in me getting mine, or some rudimentary, paint by numbers view of the past that I belong to. So therefore, I automatically look, Watch made this country, and Watch you. But never mind the fact that they wanted to turn French fries into freedom fries. But there's a Lafayette Street in almost every country in this world, because without the French, we would have lost the Revolutionary War. Never mind the fact that the French Enlightenment and the Freemasons that were there at the time spread the idea of liberal democracy, which is what we have now, a republic.
Right. And that was the Scottish Rite.
Right. The Scottish Rite is everything above 3 degrees. Well, there's ancillary bodies. Technically in Freemasonry, there's only 3 degrees. But beyond that, you can be Scottish Rite, York Rite, Knights Templar. There's a female version called the Order of the Eastern Star that women can join.
Which my mother was.
Yeah. And so there's obviously, more learning to do. But even within the course, it's kind of like getting your black belt. If once you get your black belt, that's not the end of your learning, it's the beginning. You've got your basics down when you have a black belt. That's the idea. From this point on, you are a martial artist learning the art form. Up till then, we're just training your body to do what you tell it to when you want it to do it.
Right.
And the same thing applies to masonry. I think at the 3rd degree, you're now a mason, but you have this is when your true learning starts. Yeah, so that's why I'm so excited to do it before my birthday. So I'm going for my 3rd degree then. And there's a reason why we have in history, we call it the 3rd degree. If somebody gives you the 3rd degree, if they're really asking you a ton of questions and they're berating you,
It's in depth.
Yeah. So there's a lot of Freemason slang we use in American culture we're not even aware of, including calling somebody a square back in the day. It was because Freemasons overall didn't party or wouldn't do drugs right out of the gate. Like, they had parties of their own, but they weren't boisterous and falling all over the place. They were a little more held together. And somebody being on the level, somebody that you can trust, that this person is honest with you. That comes from Freemasonry. And the 3rd degree is the hardest, questioning you'll get in life, in theory, is the idea. And that's why we named it that.
How many presidents were Masons?
14.
And probably not our current president?
No, definitely not. Because of the requirement of education and knowledge.
And moral?
Well, even within, there's room to be forgiven for your moral shortcomings, and you have to be aware of them because everybody has them. So there's not like this, like priesthood. However, just knowing your shit, in terms of being intellectually curious enough to care about what you're going to do, is more. There's no way. There's just no way. I think the most obvious one in the last few years, I guess, would be George W. Bush, the father.
Yeah.
Or H.W. Bush, rather. H.W., because he reeks of it. He's one of these guys who is just, too steady for his own good. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it curtailed, his upbringing curtailed his personality in some ways that allowed Clinton, who allegedly is one too, but I've never seen evidence of that, kind of out.
Well, I've had a lot of encounters with the Clintons, and especially with him. And
I've never shaken hands with him, is what I'm saying.
Oh, well, you should, because he's, extremely poised and one of the better educated people.
Oh, yeah, he's a smart man. Absolutely.
That I've met. As my mom was heavily into politics, and
as you should be, because we live in a democracy. It takes constant gardening.
Yes.
It is not a lazy man's form of governing.
Yeah.
For the regular citizen, if you want to be lazy, go join a theocracy or some sort of monarchy. It's way easier. Right. Let the dictator dictate when you live and die. Let him make the rules. Let him only apply them to his friends or to you, depending on how he feels that week, and die when your time is up. Everything else takes work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Other than that, I have no opinion.
No opinion. We have no opinions.
Yeah.
What is your opinion?
My opinion
on our opinions.
Is that we should play Flashback Heart Attack?
How did you know this?
I think that's
psychics.
Right.
There's psychics among us.
Izio, the Japanese metal band that wore makeup and had really cool costumes and were produced by Gene Simmons, their initial album.
Oh, wow.
Amazing record. I love that record. Did the day it came out, and not just because it had these H.R. Geiger-looking hands on the cover doing the ninja. I think the third ninja hand sign. Just awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very cool. Gene Simmons had produced a lot of bands. He produced this guy that I sing with, Mickey Free, who was in Shalimar.
Right.
And
Who
he was,
who Charlie Murphy, rest his soul, made that joke about him.
Yes,
looking at that.
he's not a girl.
He's fine as a motherfucker. He meant Mickey Free. That's right.
It's so true. And yeah, we miss Charlie Murphy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a sad loss.
Sweetheart. He was a sweetheart.
Definitely.
I used to see him all the time at Caroline's in New York. Just the nicest guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, he would, the circle of people that he was kind of hanging out with, like the other comics who were there, were a good portion of them were dicks. But it made it how nice he was stand out by contrast, just over the top,
Yeah.
So there you go.
Real quick,
There's no such thing, by the way.
Right. I saw that you did this, and it's something that I've always wanted to do, which is you got to throw out a baseball.
The first pitch?
Yeah,
right,
the first
at a Pirates
pitch.
game.
At
Right.
a Pirates game. That's something, a dream of mine.
Yeah.
That I've always wanted to do at a Dodger game, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do it all the way to the...
Yeah, I made it across the mound.
Yeah? Did you do it at the mound, or did you do it halfway?
No, I did it all the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on the mound, and I threw it all the way to the...
He's a sporty guy.
Yeah. I was a little to the left, but I wasn't... The weird thing the oddest part of it is you don't want to... I had this moment of like, oh, you're not supposed to look like you're trying too hard. Like, it's just supposed to be a thing. You're not supposed to throw a heater and be a jerk. And if you whiff it and you miss, by a little bit, you've thrown your fastball, it's going to careen up that way or whatever. So you kind of modulate what you're going to do more so than you would even in a game. Right? It's this weird thing because you don't want to go out there and go, yeah, I'm a real pitcher. And have people go, all right. And it takes kind of it becomes an ego moment as opposed to, yay, I'm glad to be here and I love the team and I'm, happy to support and thanks for having me, which is really the energy that deserves. You don't want to come out and go, I'll show you what this is my chance in the sun. Yeah. So it was, but yeah, I threw it and it was great. I got to take my girlfriend and her grandmother, who her grandmother lives in Pittsburgh, and they're all Pirates fans. So we got to hang out in the dugout, and I had all the team players all doing the Zoltan sign, which is from
nice.
Dude, Where's My Car, which is how that came about because they all started doing it for good luck. And somebody just did it the other day, like trying to revive it because they got on base and they're like, we need our charm back because they kind of stopped doing it and then they lost.
Oh, see?
Yeah, and I'm like, it's magic. I'm just saying. I know because I invented it.
Did you? You
I
invented
did. I made it up. Yeah, they had a little thing in the call sheet that said $29.47 to whoever comes up with the Zoltan hand sign because we want them to do something, kind of like Mr. Spock. They couldn't figure out what it was. And I was like, well, it's my cult. I should be the one to figure it out. So I went home that night, literally in front of a mirror, and just tried like 4 or 5 different things. Ultimately, the second closest was doing kind of a Z as the 2 Spock hand signs, but it was too complicated. So many people couldn't do it, And then I was, because I'm a guitar player, I was like, maybe just pinkies, this kind of deal, or and then this came up, and I was like, that's the easiest, just pow. Everybody can do that fast.
Yeah.
And you can just show them how to do it, and you're done. And so this whole became Zoltan like that. So I just came to the director the next day, Danny, and I was like, I got 2 of them. I think this is the winner, Zoltan, like that. And everybody just makes a Z in front of their chest like that. And he was like, that's awesome. Can you guys do that? And you're like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah. And there it was. That was it.
We're like, where's my $24?
Yeah. They added it to my check, I think. But it was a good time. And Sean Scott's a really good guy. That's all I'm going to say. Everybody's cool. The many people don't know this, perhaps, but the lead alien, the female alien with the ice blue eyes and the black hair or whatever, is married to Josh Todd.
Oh.
Lead singer Buck Cherry.
Wow.
And Josh Todd's, by the way, his solo record is bitchin'. It's such a great, it was one of the most underrated albums to come out in the last 15 years. Awesome record. It's like, there was a period where that and the Thornley record were like the just on constant play in my
Yeah.
car and in my head.
They came to me last year for management, and
Nice.
I have too many bands.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's just me, so I'm like,
Yeah,
no.
right.
And they're a band that needs a lot of care.
That's I believe that.
Yes.
I believe that.
Yeah.
But his particular solo album is just awesome, you know. So, anyways, so the Zoltan hand sign was the whole thing that led up to that. And random that my girlfriend's family is from Pittsburgh. That, you know,
Very random.
yeah, just well, or not at all, depending on your belief about the simulation hypothesis, which I'm a big believer in at this point.
What is that? I've never heard of that.
Oh, this is the idea that we live in a simulated universe. This is all fake.
Oh, this is the Matrix type thing?
Yeah. That's the closest one to. And the more obvious reality is that we're probably 3 or 4 layers deep, because any society that would come up with a sim that was as believable as the outside world, you would go into it and then eventually think it was real and create a sim within it. So if you look at like Ayurveda or the sort of Hindu ideas that there's 7 layers deep into this world, or that, you know, 7th heaven, and the idea that to get out of this, we're 7 sims deep into this thing, and we have to graduate out of each one to get back to our physical body that we actually are. You know, like Inception, the buried idea. You know, and there's more mathematically sound. There's more sound mathematics done about the idea that it's real, you know, that we live in a simulation than otherwise. Nick Bostrom's work, obviously Elon Musk, who's adorable, has been has been talking about this for a bit. I think the one thing that really struck me that was like this, I talk about it in my stand-up. I like the idea. I think there's a lot of room to joke about it and a lot of room to just muse on it. It's great, you know, stoner fare for a lot of people too. They just sit and smoke weed and go, "What if we all live in the fingernail of a hippie?" You know, that kind of idea. That's been that thought form's been around.
That's just dirty.
That's been
They're
around.
just fungi, man.
That's right. That thought form's been around. Hey,
That's just India.
lichen and fungi can survive in space, and they have, and that's how they, you know, the idea of seeding life on planets. That arguably that's how life on Earth started, if it didn't originate from here initially, which is another thought entirely. But either way, human beings have been around in our current form for almost 200,000 years. You know, we haven't actually made it, you know, like effectively we're genetically almost identical to what we were 150,000 years ago, but for some height. Our brains haven't gotten that much bigger. We haven't gotten that much more capable necessarily. And it took us from the Industrial Revolution to now to go from bicycle to space. Less than 200 years. You know, less than 100 in all practical terms. 100 years out of humans existing for 150,000. And the argument I heard that I really liked was, how many times has this happened? How many times did we get a moment where we caught on, we had an industrial revolution, we had an enlightenment, we, you know, for about 500 years we were on a friggin' roll, and we either left the planet and the people left behind were decimated by some stupid accident or whatever, or one tribe did it and they just split, or we've done it and this is a prison colony for idiots like Australia, you know, initially, you know, is that they dumped some people here who weren't genetically strong enough to get to the next phase, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is that if we've been around for 150,000 years and we've done all this in the last 100, how many times could we have done this over and over? Maybe Atlantis existed and then half of them left and the other half, you know, were injured in a giant, whatever the thing that hit the earth that killed everybody was. It caused the flood, or one of the many floods that we've been through, or a particular ice age or heat wave killed off a bunch of people. But we'd already known that and we left. We went to Andromeda, and enough to, you know, and 50,000 years passed before humans got their footing again.
Right.
And then we had another 150 years of like, okay, we got it. Okay, well, let's start painting with oils. Oh, oils are flammable. Oh, I can make carbon paper. Oh, out of same thing I make carbon paper out of, I can make black powder. Oh, I can make a jet engine. Like in a couple, yeah, in a couple hundred years. I mean, look at the span of human existence and how fast we've moved in the last couple hundred. Well, who's to say we haven't done that 6 times?
Right, or 7.
Yeah, right. That's right. So, and I think there's a reasonable argument for that. The other thing too is I do a show every year for the SENS Foundation, which is the 1,000-year lifespan folks. And they've been working on this for a while with Ray Kurzweil of Google and Aubrey de Grey from Harvard and all these people who are working on extending human life, right, to 1,000 years.
Now, real quick, I heard about this. This is you can live naturally up to 1,000 years, but if you get hit by a car, then that.
Yeah, they won't be able to rebuild you necessarily. Although the idea of uploading your consciousness to something until they grow you a new body from your own cells is completely reasonable. They're already growing single organs. So if eventually they find a way to store your brain, or at least preserve it until they grow you a whole new body and then attach it and the nerves grow back, however long that takes. If you live to be 1,000 years, if that process took 30, would you really give a shit? What if you're in effectively an induced coma for 30 years and you woke up with a new body and you're like, yeah, it's been 30 years.
Right.
You're here. But here's the trick is, and this is my argument for why a simulation, because having one, or the existence of it, mathematically, scientifically, philosophically, the big question is why. Having it is not the issue. If you can do it, you can do it. End of story. And you can. So why would you do it? I think to teach your young, because let's say we live to be 1,000 years old. Knowing what you know about most human beings in the first 100 years of their lives, if you live to be 700 years old, would you let anybody, like a normal earthling, wander around your lovely society that has puttered on without war and destruction and pollution and shit for 700 years? Would you let them anywhere near it? Of course not. But if you had a child and you're like, okay, my kid's going to grow up, he's going to go through his teen years, his 20s, his 30s, his 40s, his 50s. Before his brain matures or her brain matures, they're dangerous. They have to mature a lot before So you would build a simulation facility. When your kids reach that, you'd raise your kids till they were about 10 or 12 years old, and then they'd go off to the academy. And when they went off to the academy,
brilliant.
They would go into a taptic device, either liquid or a gelatinous vat where you could
Kinda
pop
like
into
Star Wars?
Yeah, like when Luke is healing. You would either have a neural tap, like Matrix style, that would go into you. More than likely, they would be able to feed it through the cells of your body. That kind of advanced technology, you wouldn't have to punch a hole in anybody to do that. And this person, when they were 12 years old, would go through a lifetime an hour.
Holy cow!
For the next 15 to 20 years.
Whoa, that's. I think could your brain really comprehend?
Yes.
A lifetime in an hour for 20 years?
Yeah, well, you
that's a lot of information.
But think how but that...
And emotion, too, if there is emotion in that.
Well, you're also assuming that our brains are the same now as they would when they mature to be 300, 400 years old. You're talking with a person who, in the case of the sim, certain elements of your personality would have to be hidden from you for the sim to be believable. In the same way that after a while in a video game, you believe you're the guy. You're just running around shooting. You care about the people that are on your team. You don't care about the people who you're killing, like in Call of Duty, what have you.
Right.
That's believable enough, and that's just shitty, semi-photorealistic digits, right? If you could believe the taptic experience, if you went into this thing and it gave you the sensation of being born and raised, and it's why you don't remember a lot of your past and all this kind of stuff, because what isn't necessary you broom, and the experiences that do matter when you're old and you go, oh, I'm glad I fell in love, or I'm glad I left that person, or I'm glad I learned this, or I'm glad I did it. At some point, you would mature to a point where you wouldn't have to do it anymore. And I think there are stages of human beings in this sim, if it's a sim, if you can operate from the premise that it is. There are the people who are highly religious and believe that a Messiah is going to come and take them out of it at some point. They're basically on a field trip. They're the young'uns. They're maybe in physical years. Their real body outside of this is 10 to 15 years old. For about 15, about 5 to 12 years after their 10th birthday, they would go through this sim where somebody eventually comes back and gets them in these lifetime cycles, and they get used to it. So they expect it after a while, and then they go back in when they're 15 or 16 or 18 or 20 or whenever this is. They don't have a guide anymore. They're a little weirded out. So there's a bunch of people who are like, I know the Messiah is going to come get me, but he's not really, because you're on another level of maturity. You got to let go of the side of the pool and start swimming. Then there's the people who've been here a bunch of times, are learning very well, and those people don't need a guide anymore. They believe in the universal something. They have this idea that I know there's something beyond this, but I don't know exactly what, and I don't want anybody telling me what it is. I just want to intuit it and relate and learn all these deeper lessons. I don't want this promise of reward in heaven or punishment in hell. I'm too adult for that now. I'm now growing to realize that I have a moral obligation to my fellow man that is not based on a cookie or a spanking, right? Unless it involves both, which, hey, go for it. Whatever you like. But the other one would be, right, the other one would be atheists, which believes that there's nothing beyond this. And in theory, they could be bots within the simulated universe, and when they die, they really don't go anywhere. They really do evaporate, like Tron characters that just kind of... Yeah, they're right. Atheists in whole might be parts of the sim that don't leave. And so when they go, I believe that when I die, nothing will happen. My body will rot, it will de-res effectively, and my soul will not exist, and it will just be nothingness. Well, yeah, that's what happens to Pac-Man whenever you unplug the goddamn thing. So I get it. Okay, that's fine. Until you plug him back in, he's not gonna do it. Now, in a depth of a sim, even as high as that is, you could have reproducing sims, so some of the atheists come back again and again and again in a cyclical form.
Right.
But they still don't have a consciousness beyond that. Doesn't mean they couldn't evolve it over time and then go, hey, wait a second, why don't I have a body outside this? That's not fair. And then in a future, arguably, you could go, wow, this sim, which wasn't a naturally born human in our form, has actually achieved a level of consciousness that is as mature or more mature than anybody else who's in the sim. It deserves every right to leave. So we create synthetic bodies for them out of organic materials. So they don't have to technically be synthetic.
Would these be gluten-free bodies?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't eat one. They probably wouldn't taste very good. But unless they were designed that way. It's another conversation. But the point being... is that you could argue that eventually even a synthetic form of consciousness could say, I want a body outside this, and I would rather, leave the sim and experience life as it genuinely is. But the reality is you can't know. The sim itself wouldn't be aware that it was in one.
Right.
So it wouldn't know what it was missing. That's the same problem with AI, which I think, I think everybody's like, AI is going to rise up and kill us. Well, if you don't want it to kill us, maybe start calling it synthetic intelligence instead of artificial. Maybe it won't be felt like you're shunning it as much. It's not really artificial. It's synthetic. It's actually happening. It's not fakely happening. Artificial intelligence is everything up till artificial intelligence, what we think of like before consciousness. Up till it reaches consciousness, it's bullshitting us. This is the Turing test, right? And Ex Machina, the idea that can it fool you? Mm-hmm. If you can be fooled, then it's alive. Well, bullshit. Because I think human beings actually won't make AI. We'll give up before we've done it because we'll think we've done it. We'll go, shit, this thing's alive. And it's not. It just knows how to mimic life so effectively that it can bullshit us. And I mean, look at a human being, a grown adult talking to a puppet. After about 6 sentences, they talk to the puppet. They don't look at the person puppeteering it below the floor. They don't look around and go, voice isn't even coming from here. They start talking to the goddamn puppet because that's how we're built. So the Turing test is bullshit.
Some people get paid a lot of money to talk to the puppet.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I'm for it.
So my favorite people are puppets.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. My case exactly. So, but the point is, the Turing test, the idea of AI or the idea of a simulated consciousness, in our current form and how we experience the sim, we wouldn't really know the difference. And eventually we will get to the point where we'll go, oh shit, it's a sim. And if enough people wake up to the fact that it's a sim, the sim is a failure, and everybody wakes up in their tube and goes, oh shit, that was... Damn it. We realized, we won. We won. I got the level 9.
It's got that weird jelly on your
That's
face.
right. And you just go have a shower and you go, have you done... And I think, obviously time, they always say there's multiple dimensions, time can fold on itself. That's because if you hold Call of Duty in your hand on a disc, every moment in the existence of your character in Call of Duty, every gunshot you've ever fired, every possibility of every circumstance, every moment where you've run into a wall and can't jump and somebody knifes you because you're looking the wrong way in Call of Duty, every second that you could possibly experience with all the drama, all the music, everything is inertly sitting on that disc. It's all there. That's what our universe is. It's a 2D version of everything that you can access at any given time, depending on what you put your consciousness on. Right. And it only reses out based on what you're expecting. So we used to think the sky was the roof, and nothing went past it. So it sort of behaved like that. And now the deeper we look into space, the more we find, and it starts to res its way out to we're getting better and better pictures of the Hubble. We're getting like, oh shit, there's 148 livable planets in the galaxy. We thought there weren't any, we couldn't find any. We think there are them, we find them all the time now. We're even finding that one of the moons of Jupiter can house life, right? So as we expect it, so it becomes. As above, so below, which is one of the the great Hermetic traditions, but it's also something that is recurrent in Freemasonry, and to kind of bring it back to that idea that there's something bigger than all this, and that we have a responsibility to use it. And so instead of this being a sim playground of bullshit, it's all fake or the Matrix or being used, it's a school, so you can learn to straighten up, so that one day you'll be able to walk amongst your real family in this outer realm that doesn't need to be simulated anymore. And this is basically an ancestor sim, because the best way for us to grasp, okay, this is still our human form. We still have these certain human limitations about our DNA and our genetic code. We've modified the shit out of a bunch of them. And we've got, augmented reality aspects of our brain. We've tapped in AI to ourselves. We can pull almost any of the information in the universe, but we still have to mature biologically to be alive. Mm-hmm. And we know this about ourselves. So we've created a circumstance where we can do it. And we go into this sim thousands of times. And if you believe the Buddhist idea, 10,000 lifetimes and you've matured.
Right.
You can now go to nirvana. Well, nirvana, what's nirvana? Nirvana is where you actually see, that's where you are yourself, yeah, and the band.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember when my father was still alive, he would say, straighten up and fly right. Mm-hmm. And that term was more about, flying into the future.
Yeah. I know, just Danny. Being Danny.
Just sneaking by. I appreciate it.
That was fun.
Very sneaky. Why would she not use a French door? I don't know.
She's just being,
Just being Danny.
doing what she had to do.
I'm very, very sneaky.
Right. Same reason the dog goes by and, whatever. Just sometimes it's just fun.
It is fun.
Just like music, by the way.
That's right. So here's some fun music. Danko Jones. Are you familiar with Danko Jones at all? Three-piece from Canada. Danko's an actual human being, but it's also the name of the band, Danko Jones. And I discovered them for myself, not discovered them, but discovered them for myself when I was in Canada shooting Queer as Folk, and I started to fall in love with Canadian rock because they lack our permanent sense of irony in the United States that keeps us from enjoying anything. And so they don't give a shit. They don't. They go see a great band live, and it's fun, and they go, "This is great, eh?" And they actually have fun, whereas a lot of American audiences are now at this point where we're like, this is good, but it's not that, and it should be a little bit of that, but maybe it should. I don't know. Should I be smiling? Are these okay? Is it cool to smile at these guys? Like we're so self-involved and full of shit when we're watching bands, and there's none of that in Canada. None of it. True. So you go up and you watch Nickelback, or you watch Default, or you go see any of the Canadian bands. You're like, it's a great time. And everybody there is enjoying themselves, and they're not standing there with their arms crossed like a bunch of LA assholes, judging everyone else for like, oh, I'm not having fun. If they're having fun, they must be idiots. Like it's so high school. If the United States is high school, Canada's junior high, and that's a lot more fucking fun. They're like 8th grade. They're like, this is fucking great, Yeah. So I went and I was in the music store up there and buying CDs. I was like, well, shit, I don't know any of these bands. I'm gonna start. And I bought Age of Electric, and I bought Static and Stereo was one of the first bands that I bought. Todd Kearns, who he plays with Slash. He's and he's in the Sin City Sinners in Vegas now, or whatever. But his the early Todd Kearns stuff in Canada is just wicked. Such great stuff. But anyway, so Danko Jones, this whole giant section. These assholes put out an album every year. They're like so prolific. And on the little CD card that describes them, it had a review. They do this with all their bands because Canada takes care of its fucking bands. At the top of it, it said, if AC/DC and Kiss had a baby together while sniffing glue, it would be Danko Jones. And I bought everything. I just literally walked out with 9 CDs, and they're great. Perfect. And I recommend the entire repertoire. It is just like balls out fun party rock, great stuff, and they are just a joy. Yeah. So Heartbreak's a blessing.
That's they're a joy. Heartbreak is a blessing.
There it is.
Yeah,
And,
Danko Jones. We got to get a real clacker. You know that you live in Hollywood; they're available everywhere. Like literally, no, you don't even need a good one. You just need a loud one. It doesn't even matter. They even have the mini ones now, like the really good mini ones that everybody uses on their short films for their like that. Oh yeah, straight up.
I just like the energy. Like when you do it, I don't know. I just feel.
Yeah, it's like your Tony Robbins moment.
Yeah.
Where he goes, his big hand gesture.
Yeah. Is that weird?
Yeah, no, that's what he does every time. That's his big getting,
Pumping
get
it
into
up.
it
Yeah.
as you should.
So for me, it's just turned into that because I've been doing it for so long that it's just like, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So it'd be weird to just like be like, I don't know. That'd be weird to me.
No.
It doesn't break
See,
anything.
no,
my
see,
God.
any problem making noise. Ta-da.
And you were back on the Tortoise and Hare experience.
Holy
The
cow.
guest has been Hal Sparks.
That's right.
Holy cow.
Well,
Yeah.
he still is House Bar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I will remain
Still
so
is.
for the rest of eternity. This is a
Yes.
good one. I'm gonna ride this
Yeah.
one out.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's funny working with you go back and forth about the idea of it being a sim and like should you live longer if that's the case? Shouldn't you just cycle through life after life and live them at a normal length, try to ride them out their natural organic length, and then or should you extend them and try to go further? And my argument would be you should always try to extend it and make it go further because that's you getting to know the idea that you should live much longer, and that's a graduate of this program where you went through each of these classes. Initially, you'd start out as a zygote. Like, okay, when you're 6 years old in this future world where everybody lives to be 1,000, and they send you to preschool, what they'd send you there is okay, you're going to go into this little simulator thing, and you're going to feel what it's like to asexually reproduce cell by cell with just one leap. It's going to feel really weird, and it'll tickle, but you'll be able to do it, and you'll learn how to do a one-cell separation. And then you'll go through, okay, in elementary school, you get to be a lizard, and you get to be, a bird, and you live a life in this sim as a whole bird, and you go through the Jonathan Livingston Seagull experience. You fly into the wall and you come out the other side alive, and then
And for those of you who don't know that book, you should absolutely 100% read that because this new millennial
crowd,
world they don't read.
They read more than the Gen Xers did technically.
Well,
they
that's
volume-wise,
true,
and it all happens in cycles. There was a period in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution where everybody gave up on reading because they thought, magic and that the Matrix was going to come quicker, so they didn't even bother. Mm-hmm. They used to listen to the radio. That was the internet at the time. So once the radio started happening, people, reading dropped off precipitously. But then it had a big comeback, and now books are selling like crazy, and people are reading more than ever. And millennials. They're doing more research than the previous generation, which is a good thing. They're jumping to more conclusions, though, because their brains haven't matured, and that's what you do when your brain hasn't matured. Your brain isn't fully formed until you're 22 years old anyways. It's,
right.
Your prefrontal cortex is, it's a cross between Swiss cheese and gelatin, and so your impulse control and your decision making and all that kind of stuff isn't fully, there yet. And I would make the argument that in a world where we live to be thousands of years old, perhaps, when you had hair, or when you had either hair or you had hair that had color in it, naturally would be childhood. So till you're 70 or whatever, and every last stitch of black or blonde has fallen out of your hair, mm-hmm. You're just a child in that world, and that's how somebody's mature. Like, oh, Jesus Christ, that guy's only 60, he's an infant. So it's and that's because there's more maturity than just obviously the two halves of your brain fusing together longer. And who's to say that if you live to be 500 years old, your separated brain doesn't eventually build such a connective tissue of neurotransmitters that your pituitary, all those things that are almost infantile looking by comparison to the density of how much is, and that's how you use 70% of your brain instead of 7.
Right.
Very cool.
Or 10 like me.
Now, real quick, we only have a very
15.
Limited time with you.
Maybe
I know
18.
you got to go and get ready to do
rock.
some stuff, some rock.
Yep.
You are doing stand-up. Have you always been a comedian as far as, for stand-up, or were you an actor that then turned into
I started doing stand-up when I was 15. I got my first professional acting job when I was 16, and I was in a band in high school, so they all kind of happened as parallel tracks.
Oh, cool.
In a lot of ways. Stand-up I view as a singular art form. So it's again, I often get asked which one I like better, or those kind of things always come up because people don't understand them. They think of them as activities, not identities, and that's always a mistake, especially in the arts. I don't do stand-up. I am a stand-up. I don't act. I'm an actor. I don't make music. I'm a musician. So all of those things are intrinsic to my nature, and nor should they ever be separated from that. That being said, stand-up was the one I could always count on for a paycheck all through the years, and you don't have to wait, and that gives me the patience to wait for the right role. So acting-wise, I haven't had to take too much crap over my life. I've been able to make real decisions, which being a comedian gives you, and music allows me to, the release of genuine emotion without having to fit the script.
Yeah.
I write the script myself.
Very cool.
Each of those art forms has a different outlet. Like you can do rage in music. You can't do rage in stand-up. You can do annoyance in stand-up. But it can't handle rage.
Which is kind of a goal.
Right. It's to avoid rage. We use stand-up, right? Once you're there, music is a better outlet for it. You can do rage and annoyance in acting, but it's not your choice. It's up to the script and up to the circumstance, whatever you're working on, or the play you're doing that day, or the film you're doing that day. Like, you can't come into work mad and go, I feel like, let's do this scene mad. And no, it doesn't work that way. You draft your emotions to the needs of that product. And in terms of that, stand-up is wholly my own. It only has one requirement, that I make people bark air out of their neck uncontrollably. As long as I do that, I can talk about anything I want, which is an amazingly free situation. It is a very small price to pay for the ability to do that. So, yeah. So I'm at the Dead Crow Comedy Club on the 12th and 13th of May, and then I'm at the Irvine Improv on the 18th of May, and then I'm singing. I just did Flappers last night, but I'm singing tonight at the Whiskey, and tomorrow night at Lucky Strike, and my buddy Dave Hill, who also does comedy and music. He's in his band. Interestingly enough, he's like a shred guitar player, but he's also like an alt comic who's done This American Life. Like he does, portraits on This American Life. He's super funny. Mr. Dave Hill on Twitter, if you follow him. And his band does I think John Oliver's theme.
Oh wow!
Is one of their songs on This
HBO,
Week Tonight,
yeah.
Last Week Tonight. Anyways, going to go see him and then race off and do another show, because that's how I live in this town.
Right.
You just jam pack everything you can possibly fit in.
Yeah, it's absolutely that way in Los Angeles. You just don't have enough time.
That's because it's a hodgepodge circumstance. This is a sales floor. It is not the creation space.
Yeah.
People get mad because LA's all about selling it and getting the idea and all that. This is not where art is made. This is where art is sold, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? And people oftentimes will shit on LA because everybody's in kind of sales mode. But you wouldn't do that if you were at Macy's. You wouldn't expect people to be sewing garments in a Macy's. Right. You go there to get what you want, and specifically what you want. And you may not like some stuff, and it doesn't mean you don't like it to exist. You just don't buy that, and it's fine. And if you can keep that kind of detached awareness about it, you can enjoy the experience a lot more. It's like shopping. If you know that you're there just to look around and buy something, if it suits you, that's fun. Right. If you know you're there to get one thing and leave, that's also fun. If you're somewhere in between, you're confused and annoyed. Yeah. Or you're with someone who's doing either of those activities and you prefer the opposite, which is what happens with most shopping couples, and also in LA with production companies.
Yes.
I like this kind of script. He likes this kind of script. And so we're both looking for the wrong thing, but we're in a team together, so that's why a lot of stuff doesn't get made. Yep. It's that simple.
That's very true.
And for more information, hellsparks.com.
Yeah. And at Hal Sparks on Twitter. Yep. Yeah. And HalSparks.tv for my political radio show every weekend.
Oh, really?
Stream it.
And the Hal Sparks Daily as well.
Yeah, my newspaper. You can follow that you get that on Twitter. You can sign up for it.
Now, we have literally moments before you got to go.
Yep.
So, do you have anything else that you'd like to
I did a movie called I have a movie called Bachelor Lions. It's coming out. I think it'll be out in August. We shot it just a couple months ago. And it looks like it might be turned into a series ultimately, so that it might reprise the role for a series, which would be a lot of fun.
Nice. Is
But
Lab Rat still shooting?
nope, we're done. We finished Lab Rats, and I was able to move on. I'm on Fuller House. I did one episode last season. I'll probably do 1 or 2 this year.
Nice.
We'll see. That was a great group of people. And then, it's nice. Like I do about, on average, I do about like, and it's weird to have an average now, but I do 3 years between series. Usually it's like I'll stop a series and then I'll have about 2 years before I'll start really going, okay, I'll settle into another one or I'll do something else entirely. And then it takes about a year to get it, pilot it, start shooting it, and it starts airing. So usually this window of that time, and I'm about the halfway point. And so I'm certain there's something around the corner. My goal in life is to be, Alan Arkin, or Hume Cronin, like these old Hollywood staples at 90.
Yeah.
I don't really give a shit about my career now, except in terms of that it keeps humming along and creating good work. That you look back one day and go, oh shit, this guy's got a body of work that's impressive as hell. Anthony Hopkins, I didn't remember seeing him with color in his hair. Until he was famous. He didn't even have a shot at an Oscar until he was 60 years old. So I'm in that zone, so I'm very relaxed, whereas a lot of other actors I know are a bit pinched about the whole, like, God, this has got to happen.
Yeah.
I'm like, not really.
Old.
No, it's something to be said for being old and having a career.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that. So I'm very relaxed about this, like kind of pacing the quality of what I do. So I can take time off and go, I can just be a stand-up and own that for a while, or be a musician and own that for a while. And if the right acting thing comes along, I'll jump on it. And
Awesome.
Series you got to dedicate 7 years of your life to when you sign on the dotted line. So that's a big deal. So I don't go into that lightly anymore.
Max, any last plugs?
Well,
Alan has to leave immediately.
All right, well, how
And
can-
I play ESP guitars. You wanted me to bring up
That's
my music.
right.
Yeah, I'm signatory to ESP. Amazing guitars. I play the EC 500. They don't make them anymore, but it's the magic guitar for me. But the 1000s are awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
And speaking of endorsements, I am endorsed by Hearback Pro, Hear Gear, and Hear Technologies. Zamitis Guitars. Thank you to them for their
That just
amazing
happened.
guitars. Yes, I'm over the moon about that. Ross Chapman and everybody over at SGI, I always want to send my love out to them.